Hello, and welcome to the Washington State Retirement Planning Podcast. The goal for this podcast is to help bring financial education to all of Washington State employees. I'm your host, Ethan Miko, and I'm thrilled to have you here. Before we dive into all the nitty-gritty details of your retirement benefits as a Washington State employee, I just want to tell you a little bit about myself and my background. So I'm actually from the Big Island of Hawaii, and when I was growing up, when I was in the 5th grade, I had a teacher named Mr. Nickel who made us run the mile pretty much every week for PE. Now, most kids hated it, but for some reason or other, I really liked it. And one of my best friends actually got me to join the track team that year. There was like 2 weekends for the year, something like that. It wasn't much, but that kind of got me in the door of it. And I stuck with track all throughout high school. And when all that was said and done, I didn't want to be over yet. So I explored, where else could I run track at? University of Hawaii doesn't have a men's track team, so I was forced to look elsewhere. And I ultimately ended up at Central Washington University. I competed for them for 4 years. My specialty was the high jump, and currently I actually coach Sila's high school's track and field team as well. Anyways, after I graduated Central Washington, I ended up getting recruited by a firm called Axe Advisors. You probably know them now as Equitable. So they have a division that specializes in working with Washington State teachers. They call them the RBG, Retirement Benefits Group. So that's all they do is retirement benefits. So I was in that group for almost 4 years. So that's kind of how I got into learning about how the state pension systems work, the intricacies of it. So ultimately, I decided to leave them a few years in to start my own firm so I could do things my own way. When I left to start my own business, I could have done anything I wanted to, but I decided to stay with helping educators. The main reason was I just saw there was a giant lack of education, and I knew things could be so much better for them. I know teachers had a really big impact on my life growing up, and I want to give back in any way I can. Now, one of the most profound moments that kind of lead me to the decision of leaving and starting my own, firm and eventually this podcast was one day I was actually at Gilbert Elementary School in Yakima, and I remember going to meet with this cook who had been there for about 35 years. She was about 68 years old, and she was about ready to retire. She wasn't sure if she could do it yet, but she was just physically done and just, couldn't really keep up with the demands of the job anymore. So I went into her office, and it was this, cluttered little thing. Opened the door up, there was like one desk, there with a computer screen, a chair, and then maybe a little chair next to it. There was, the room was small. You could barely fit 2 of us in there. So we sat in there. I had my little yellow pad, no desk. So I actually had to put it on my lap and kind of had to learn to write upside down for that meeting, and just kind of going through, what she had and the benefits, just kind of like a normal meeting. She handed me her TRS-3, or actually, I guess it would be PERS 3 statement, because she was a public employee. Anyways, she handed me the statement there, and she goes, "It's not very much." And yeah, it was like, 100, maybe 150 at best there. She goes, "I'm not sure what to do with it, how it works." So I went back and said, "Hey, let's just go through how your pension works." So I'm like, "So your plan is actually 2 parts." And her eyes widened. She goes, "What do you mean 2 parts?" I'm like, "There's another part here that you're not seeing." And she couldn't believe it. After 35 years, she was slogging money away into this retirement account, had the actual confirmation that shows her contributions and investments, and she realized there's a whole hidden piece to it. Now, after going through how the pension worked, it was maybe $1,200 a month for her, but that was all she needed to put her over the edge to retire. And she just broke down in tears. She was just so happy that this income that she had no idea existed was now coming in on a guaranteed basis in addition to her Social Security. And she was just, crying, emotional, and just ultimately happy. And honestly, had she known this a few years earlier, she probably could have retired maybe 2-3 years earlier than that. So seeing someone so sweet have to work 3 extra years because she didn't know how her benefits worked really kind of irked me. I knew there was a need for more education. Now, she's not the only one. Earlier this year, I had the exact same thing happen with a teacher of the Tri-Cities. So I know there's a lack of education, and there's not a lot of resources for you guys out there. Yes, there's the Department of Retirement Systems, but let's be honest, they don't make the best effort to educate people. They started their podcasts, which I don't know any episode that actually goes over any of your benefits. They're all kind of like fluff pieces, in my opinion. You can call them up. Usually I'm waiting on hold. The person you talk to may or may not know the answer. So sometimes you get an answer and it could be wrong. And that's happened to my clients, even myself, a few times when I'm trying to get information from them. They have their, live in-person webinars or stuff like that. But the person giving those webinars typically aren't the people you're talking to on the phone, and they're really just not licensed to give you any kind of advice. They don't know what goes into building up to retirement, the retirement process, and then what happens after that. They can help you answer questions, and then you're out the door, and that's it. So I know there need to be more education out there. And the same thing goes for people as employers and school districts. There's no licensed advisor on staff. They're going to refer you up to department systems. There are other advisors that can come in occasionally. One thing I want to drive home, because this keeps coming up, is there are no advisor or financial institution that's employed by any Washington State employer. So if you have a school district and say, oh, this is the rep for the school district, they're not employed by them. They might be the rep because that's what their company decided that they are, but there's no official documentation on that. They usually come in, they'll meet with you for free, and 9 times out of 10, they're going to try to sign you up for something. 403B is usually what they're going to go for. I've lived that in the world for 4 years. I know all the tricks and kind of what they're up to there. Now, not to say these people are bad. I've done it for 4 years. It's just that these people come in there when they're employed by other institutions, they often are limited in what they're able to offer you, and their education isn't as broad as it could be. So they know 403Bs, they know their product lineup, and that's it. And they'll try to talk you out of doing things like the DCP, or talk you out of the TAP annuity, or talk you out of some other person's product because they're trying to compete for their commission. So I know that needed to stop. So I actually started my YouTube channel about 3 years back. We have almost 200 videos on your education benefits. So you can go on demand, you can click, learn what you need to know, ask questions in the comments, and never once do you have to pick up the phone and call somebody or meet with someone and be in a high pressured sales environment. So that's ultimately my goal of delivering more education for you guys. This podcast is just a way to broaden the reach here. So if you know anyone that could benefit from learning more about their education on their retirement benefits, feel free to share this with them. So now what can you expect from this podcast? Beyond just your state pension plan, which a lot of people think it's just the pension, the income for life, and that's it. There's a lot more that goes on beyond that, right? Knowing the pension formula is a great start, but that's just skimming the surface. That was the first video I put out on YouTube, and I've done, hundreds after that, going to the finer workings of it all. So knowing the vesting requirements, the investment components to it all, as well as the outside pieces like the 403B, the deferred compensation plan, PEB healthcare system, what's a VEBA. So we're going to cover all that. But again, that's still inside your Washington State shell. You still have your federal benefits like Social Security and Medicare to think about. Then you have general planning like tax planning, estate planning. So those are all the pieces we're going to try to work into this podcast so you guys become more well-rounded financially. So to break it down, my mission is simple. I just want to provide more education for free to people so they can make better decisions, make less mistakes, and hopefully that will help you grow your wealth, maybe retire earlier, pay less in taxes, and ultimately enjoy your own free time because we all know you deserve it.